Okay, here we are moving on to part 2 of Lab 2, Position on Earth. And so this is all about latitude and longitude and the grid system that we use to locate positions on the Earth. I hope you've already seen the learning videos that I created about latitude and longitude. So this is just to help you through the lab and not so much through the concepts, which I already went over. The first page that you have something to do on is shown here. And what it's asking you is about latitude and longitude in terms of lines of meridians and lines of parallels. Sometimes latitude lines are called lines of parallels. And remember, the equator is the 0 latitude, and then any east-west running line is a line of latitude. And they are indeed parallel to each other, so it makes sense they'd be called parallels. Lines of longitude are sometimes called meridians because the 0 is the prime meridian, and then other lines of longitude are other meridians. Notice that they are not parallel. As you go from the prime meridian to the North Pole, and then you go from the longitude line of 15 west to the North Pole, those two lines of longitude converge and get closer and closer until they actually meet each other at the North Pole, and the same with the South Pole. So they're not parallel. So that's kind of an easy way to remember the difference. Now for activity 2, I asked you to skip the first few problems which involve protractors, and we would normally do that in class, but it's not really necessary. What I want you to do though is to look at this page. This is page 130, and I want you to figure out various lines of latitude. You have to draw some, you have to determine some. So for 6A, it says draw and label the following additional parallels. So 5 north. So you're looking at this diagram here, and you're going to sort of eyeball it. So you've got 0, the equator, and you've got 15 north. So 5 north is going to be about a third of the way towards that 15 from the equator. So there's a line I put in, and then you would label it 5 north. In part B, you're going to write out only the latitude to the various points on the globe. So A has been done for you. It's up here on 30 north. And remember, anywhere on this line is latitude 30 north. You're going to use a globe or atlas to determine the latitudes of these cities and the college campus at PCC. And various questions here should be pretty straightforward. The one that students sometimes have trouble with is number 11. And it asks you to name 5 special parallels. And I think if I give you one of the answers, you'll get the rest. So I'm going to do this first one. 66 degrees, 30 minutes north is known as the Arctic Circle. So that should help you out with the other ones. The next page asks you to look at just longitude. So it's a similar kind of thing where they've got, for example, a point A right here is at 30 degrees longitude. And then they ask you about point B. Where's point B? Well, point B is right here. It's not quite on the 15-degree west line, and it's not on the 30 west. But if we think about those as divided into 15, 20, 25, 30, B is about a third of the way between these. So that would be about 20 west. And I'm not going to be picky if you say 21 west or 19 west. But if you put 45 west, then clearly you didn't understand. So that's what you're going to do for this page. And then we're going to move on to putting them together. So activity 4 asks for latitude and longitude. And remember, we always list latitude first, and we always have to put north or south. Unless we're at the equator, then you can put 0 degrees and you don't need a north or south. Longitude is always listed second, and that's going to be either east or west of the prime meridian. Again, if you're at the prime meridian, it's just 0 degrees. You don't need an east or west because you're on the 0 point for longitude. So you're going to look at these maps. There's a globe and a map, which is kind of helpful because, for example, here, point C is kind of difficult to see where it is. And then if you look over here, well, it's pretty clearly at this meridian and this parallel. Lower in the page, you're going to put additional dots on the map. And then you're going to use a globe to figure out the latitude and longitude of these various cities. Now, you don't have to write the word latitude and longitude like they've done up here. You can just put 30 north, comma, 60 east, or whatever. So you're going to look up these to the nearest degree. They might give you a more precise answer with minutes and seconds, but you can do it just to the nearest degree. And then down here, you do have to think about the minutes. They don't have seconds, but they do have degrees and minutes. You want to look on a map and figure out what feature is at this position. And don't put the Pacific Ocean, because that's not a feature. That's half the globe. Okay, so it's a particular feature like a city or a lake. You should be able to find something that's pretty close to those positions and write it there. Then you're going to skip ahead to activity 9. And that's the latitude and the North Star. And this is a pretty cool thing. So today, as it says in the instructions, we use global positioning systems to figure out where points are, their latitude, their longitude, and also their elevation above sea level. But in the past, sailors used the North Star to figure out what their latitude was. So if I show you this picture, hopefully this will make sense. So here's the globe, and here's the equator, and here's the North Pole. Now Polaris is the star. It's called the North Star because it is pretty much directly over the North Pole. It's a little bit off, but if you looked straight up in the sky, if you were at the North Pole, you would see Polaris. Now, if you moved down in latitude, say to point C, Polaris is still in the direction that the arrow is showing, but because for you, horizontal is like this line here, and up for you is like that direction, Polaris appears only 45 degrees above the horizon if we assume that the horizon is 0 and due north above us is 90 degrees. And if you go down to, let's say we are down here at 20 degrees north, then Polaris is going to look like it's 20 degrees above the horizon. And so that's kind of cool. So what sailors used to do is they would be able to look at Polaris, they'd measure the angle to it with an instrument called a sextant, and let's say they measured the angle and it was 34 degrees, 34 and a half. Then they would say, oh, Captain, we are at 34 and a half degrees north latitude. That was pretty handy. Longitude, not so easy. But this is latitude and the North Star. Doesn't work in the southern hemisphere, only in the northern hemisphere. And so then there are some questions that ask you to explain this relationship, as I just sort of did, and then figure out the angle that Polaris would be above the horizon at, for example, Fairbanks, Alaska. So what you would need to do is figure out what is the latitude of Fairbanks, Alaska, and that angle will be the same as the angle that Polaris is above the horizon. So it's a pretty cool relationship. The last thing you're going to do is in the lab report, I'm only assigning one question, which is question number 9, and it's just to repeat practicing identifying latitude and longitude of these various points. So you're going to look at point A. Let's do point A together. So here's point A, and remember latitude is north or south of the equator, and here's the equator down here. So we've got 15 north, 30 north, 45 north. So point A is 45 degrees north in terms of its latitude. If the prime meridian is the 0 meridian, and then it looks like A is 15 degrees to the west of the prime meridian, so then you would put 15 west. All right, I hope this was helpful, and we will be looking at latitude and longitude quite a bit when we're doing meteorology and oceanography because things change with latitude, as you might imagine, in terms of temperatures and wind patterns and things like that. Finally, remember that I have office hours. You can visit me and get some help with labs or ask questions. And I've shown here that this is a new module at the very top of your module list, says office hours Zoom links. And I have slightly different links for each day of the week because of the time. I was only able to set up Zooms for a given time. So go there, join me for office hours. I'm happy to chat with you, talk about the labs. And then remember that live chat also occurs every Wednesday from 1 to 2. It's just typing, and I'm sitting there waiting for questions and ready to answer in real time. Okay, good luck.